Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 30, verse number 29. Atraiva naratrasvarga iti mata prachatsate yayatana vai naratyas ta ihapyapalatsita. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Lord Kapila continued, My dear mother, it is sometimes said that we experience hell or heaven on this planet, for hellish punishment are sometimes visible on this planet also. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes unbelievers do not accept these statements of scripture regarding hell. They disregard such authorized descriptions. Lord Kapila therefore confirms them by saying that these hellish conditions are also visible on this planet. It is not that they are only on the planet where Yamraja lives. On the planet of Yamraj, the sinful man is given the chance to practice living in the hellish conditions which he will have to endure in the next life. And then he is given a chance to take birth on another planet to continue his hellish life. For example, if a man is to be punished to remain in hell and eat stool and urine, then first of all he practices such habits on the planet of Yamraj, and then he is given a particular type of body, that of a hod, so that he can eat stool and think that he is enjoying life. It is stated previously that in any hellish condition, the conditioned soul thinks he is happy. Otherwise, it would not be possible for him to suffer hellish life. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport.
So we see here Lord Kapila continuing to describe the journey of a conditioned soul in this world and hereafter. And Lord Kapila thus far has described various hellish conditions of life the living entity has to experience. And having said that, in today's verse, Lord Kapila is saying, not only in the hell that such miseries exist, even in this world, such miseries exist. Atraiva narakaha swarga ithi mataha prachakshate. Prachakshate, they say, it is said, that narakaha swarga atrayeva, even in this world, even on this planet, you can see naraka and swarga existing. Mata, my dear mother. Ya yathana vai narakyas ta ihapya ihapi upalakshitaha. Sometimes the agony, the suffering of hellish planets that was described in the previous verses, they are seen. Iha api, even in this world, upalakshitaha. It is seen, it is visible. So Lord Kapila continued, my dear mother, Mataha, it is sometimes said, Prachakshate, that we experience hell or heaven, Narakaha, Swargaha, on this planet, Atrayeva, Narakaha, Swargaha, Iti Mataha, Iti Prachakshate. For hellish punishments, Narakyas Yatana are sometimes visible upalakshitaha on this planet also. Ihapi upalakshitaha. And then Prabhupada has given the example that This is not some kind of the descriptions of hell given here is not something, some kind of a fantasy, but such things exist even in this world. And Prabhupada is giving the example that somebody is a man, and as a man he is used to human life and human kind of an experience, but he has committed so many sins, and in his next life he has to suffer not in a human form of life, but something less than human. But his whole mind and intelligence is like a human being currently. It's acting because he's in a human body. So he's taken to a hellish planet of Yamaraj, and there he is forced to eat abominable things like stool and urine. And after being punished that way, he gets used to it. In another place, Prabhupada says, he starts making discrimination that this is better stool and that is not so good stool. So he develops such fineness of discrimination of the taste. And then now he is ready. And in the next life, he'll be born as a hog on this planet. And very naturally, the hogs are seen eating such abominable things in this world. So, it's not at all surprising. And the example Srila Prabhupada often gave was of Indra being cursed to become a hog. And he offended his guru, Brihaspati. He keeps offending quite often. We hear that in the Puranas. Indra keeps doing this mistake again and again. And then he was cursed to become a hog. And so he came on this earthly planet, he became a hog, and he had wife hog, children hog. And there was a big family of hogs, and friend hog, brother hog, maybe all of them. And then Lord Brahma was naturally concerned that the post of Indra is vacant. In Svargaloka there is a king, and that there's nobody sitting in that place. And Brahma, it is his service to create the planets and inhabit the planets, populate the planets with the right people with right qualifications. So it was his concern that Indra should come back, and then he goes to the earthly planet and figures out, Brahma has the divine vision, and he can find out who has become Indra, where is Indra. And he pointed out, and he came to a hog and said, come to the Swarga, you have to be the Deva Indra. And hog said, no, I have so much responsibility. This is Srila Prabhupada's way of saying, no, I have to take care of my family, children, and I can't, they're all dependent on me. I can't leave. So this is actually the situation of the conditioned soul. As conditioned souls, we get used to a kind of a life on this planet, and even though it is full of suffering, the standard of happiness is very low. Still we refuse to come out of it. And even if we are promised, like Hog was promised, the position of Indra, we refuse to come out of this. This is the power of illusion. In fact, this is the Hog thinks that he is enjoying in that. And like we consider that, my God, it is such an abominable situation it is. So that's why Prabhupada is pointing out towards the end of the purport. It is said previously that in any hellish condition, the conditioned soul thinks he is happy. Otherwise, it would not be possible for him to suffer the hellish life. That's referring to the early part of this chapter itself, where Kapila explains why this happens and how this happens. In the 4th and 5th verse of the same chapter, Kapila explains, Janturvai bhava etasmin yam yam yonim anuvrajet tasyam salabhate nirvritim na virajyate. So, Jantuhu, the living entity, vai bhava etasmin yam yonim anuvrajet. Yam yonim anuvrajet. Whatever kind of a body, the life, the living entity gets, tasyam salabhate nirvritim na virajyate. Nirvritim means to feel satisfaction, feel very happy about that kind of a situation. Nirvritam na virajyate, and never develops any, is not averse to it. Na virajyate. He thinks it is okay, it is nice. Tasyam salabhate nirvritim na virajyate. Na virajyate, he is not averse to it. Nirvritim, he feels satisfied. And in the next verse, Kapila is saying, Narakasthopi deham vai na pumam tyaktumichati. Narakasthaha dehi, the living entity is Narakasthaha, is situated in Naraka, and he's having deham, such a deha, na pumams tyaktumichati. Even he's not ready to give up that hellish body also. Narakyam nirvritau satyam. The nirvritau, the satisfaction he is feeling in Narakyam, even in a hellish satyam, he is accepting that. That's okay. Deva maya vimohitaha. How such a thing can happen? In the hellish condition of life, it is so terrible. But na virajyate, he is not averse to it. Why does that happen? Deva maya vimohitaha. It is because of the deluding power of Deva Maya, of the Lord's illusory potency. So in other words, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is described that Maya has two potencies. One of them is called the Avarnatmaka Shakti. This is the power of Avarnatmaka Shakti, that the living entity gets covered up, and he thinks that even in the hellish condition of life, he thinks nirvrutau na vichakshate, na virajyate. He does not want to give up that situation, and he feels satisfaction there. This is the deluding power of illusion. Actually, to overcome this kind of an illusory power, it requires, to crack that, to shatter that illusory power, you need spiritual potency. Without spiritual potency, it cannot be cracked. We will think that everything is very nice and life is going on. Maybe there is some suffering. I'm so smart after all. I'll just do something and then I can manage that. And that kind of a confidence, the kind of confidence materialists exhibit, as if they can overcome everything in this world, that kind of a Avarnatmaka Shakti. And to crack that one, it requires divine intervention. I remember when I was young in spiritual life, at that time I was studying in the institute, and as you know, Prabhupada gave so much importance to books, and so they had, those days, the temple president in Bangalore, they were Westerners, and they had no idea of Indian. It's not so easy for a Westerner to understand Indian situation. And with all sincerity, they wanted books to be published in Kannada, translated in this language here. So they hired one high school teacher. and he was given a salary. And somehow they found that he knows some English and some Kannada, and he would sit in the temple. Those days it was on West of Court Road, and he would go on translating. And then, so we were a few of us coming from college, and so the temple president, he called me and said, since you are from the local city, why don't you read this? And we want to, it was back Beyond Birth and Death. It's in a small book, one of those small books. So I would take the manuscripts and then I would read and check with the English. I remember doing this in the Institute library. One day, when I was doing this on the fourth chapter or something, or maybe the last chapter of Beyond Birth and Death, there was one or two sentences about the material civilization and how the material civilization, anything can happen, everything can be shattered in a moment. Something I cannot remember exactly. I read those few sentences of Prabhupada and it struck me so hard. I could not do any work. I just closed everything. I got up from my seat and I was walking up and down the aisle. There used to be cabin-like spaces. Individual student can study in like that kind of space. So I was walking up and down and it had struck me. Actually, this is how everybody must have experienced this when we read Srila Prabhupada's books, right? That's actually the cracking of the Avarnatmaka Shakti. It has happened to everybody. And that happens because of Srila Prabhupada's spiritual potency in his words. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana katha. In Krishna's words, there is that potency is there, spiritual potency. And that spiritual potency is released by a pure devotee. That is why, and devotees all over the world have experienced this. When Prabhupada describes it, it cracks. The illusion that we are all used to, it starts cracking up. And we begin to see, yes, this is reality. And, like that. And then very soon after a while, I couldn't continue being in the institute. I became devotee in the temple. So all of us have experienced this kind of a thing. So that Deva Maya Vimohitaha, Deva Maya Vimohitaha, Narakyam Nivritau Satyam, Deva Maya Vimohitaha. This kind of a cracking happens by spiritual potency. Otherwise, we may be reading books, we may be, even Vedic literatures, many people have not actually come to that stage. Recently, I was reading one article, and this is written by a very well-known scientist, and he's describing some of his life experiences. And the title of that article is The Appetite for Wonder, the Making of a Scientist. So his argument is, what makes a scientist? What is the essential qualification of a scientist? It is the appetite for wonder. That appetite, that wanting to know and seeing wonder in this world and being really wanting to know about it, that appetite for wonder makes a scientist. That's his argument. Fair enough. Yes, scientists are actually struck by the wonderful arrangements that exist in this world, and they probe into it and they want to understand more about it, and they discover some principles around it, and actually that makes a scientist. Fair enough, it's a very appropriate, we can say. But actually, after reading that, I was reflecting, what does it take to make a spiritualist? Actually, to make a spiritualist, it requires intense appetite. Not just appetite. It is an intense appetite for knowing the ultimate truth. That's for that spiritual quest. And that is actually, that spiritual appetite to know the truth is what makes a spiritualist. In fact, that spiritual appetite is covered up by the avarnatmaka shakti. And wanting to know what is this. Just like you see, our life, the beginning of our life is a black box. We don't know where we come from. The end of our life is a black box. We don't know what happens to the individual. This is enough to shake us up, but it doesn't shake us up. Between the two extreme unknowables, we lead our life and we are just blissfully unaware, unaffected by what is going to happen to us, what happened to us before. And we become so involved in this world, and people make grand plans. I'm going to set right the world. I'm going to set right everything. They go about like that, individually, in groups, institutionally, as a country, as a nation. How much this is such a big illusion. That wanting to know what is all this, that is the spiritual appetite. In fact, if you carefully see, by and large, we can divide that spiritual appetite to 4 levels of appetite. Some people have very intense appetite for spiritual quest, some not so much, some even lesser, some the least. In fact, the society is divided into 4 varnas according to the level of spiritual appetite for knowing the truth. Someone who is very, very intensely wanting to know, intense spiritual appetite, wanting to know, the proof of that intensity is willingness to sacrifice anything to know the truth. And that's what a Brahmana is. A Brahmana is one who has intense appetite. It's actually nothing to do with a caste system. I'm born in a certain family. That's why the Bhagavatam says, Yad anyatrapi drishyeta tatte naiva vinirdishet. If you see intense appetite in any other society, in any other family somebody is born in, he must be classified as a Brahmana. Yad anyatrapi drishyeta. Even if you see that appetite in... On the other hand, if somebody is born in a Brahmana family and he has no spiritual appetite, he should be classified accordingly. Because intense spiritual appetite is the driving force of a Brahmana. He is so intensely involved and engaged in researching the truth, understanding the truth, such that he is ready to make any kinds of sacrifices. That's why a Brahmana, he is ready to sacrifice all kinds of comforts, and he wants to know what is the truth. Every day he is improving in his realization, and that search for absolute truth, the spiritual quest, is supported by Vedic literatures. That's the Vedic literature is all about it. The Vedic literatures are, in one place Prabhupada says that the Vedic statements are made by highly advanced spiritualists. And hence, unless we also are at that level or attempting to rise to that level, we cannot make sense out of it. Because these are all statements of great realization. And so, unless one is making such, so a Brahmana is every day wanting to become more advanced in spiritual understanding. That is the Brahmana state. Somebody who is not that intense also wants to be engaged in the material world. They are the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas. Slightly lesser kind of a spiritual appetite, but there is some amount of spiritual appetite, even in the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas. The least or practically no spiritual appetite at all is among the Shudras. They are more intensely engaged in the material world. So that is the kind of a situation. So to be a spiritualist, it requires an intense and sustained spiritual appetite. And Srila Prabhupada said, this institution is to create Brahmanas in the true sense of the term. Because Brahmanas are those who are spiritually enlightened, and they guide Kshatriyas and Vaishyas and also the Shudras, so that the whole society is spiritually advancing. That is the whole point. And for such spiritual advancement, an essential requirement is regulation. Prabhupada gives another example. Just like in modern society, we appreciate governments and societies, right? And in modern governments, they regulate citizens' life. You have to pay tax, you have to get license, you have to get this approval, and you have to drive in this way. Imagine if the traffic is not regulated by the government, everybody is driving all over. What will happen? It requires regulation. When you have regulation, you will have civic behavior. You will have civilization. And so Prabhupada says, in the same way, unless we have regulation in our sensual activities, we cannot have any advancement of civilization. So, regulating senses, regulating mind, regulating our activities is essential, but that regulation has to be based on certain direction, and that is available in the Vedas. Traigunya Vishayo Veda. This is Traigunya Vishaya Veda means Vedas give direction to regulate the three modes of material nature. Because it is the three modes of material nature that impels a living entity to act in a certain way. If he is influenced by Sattva Guna, he acts in a certain way. Rajoguna in another way. Tamoguna in another way. And to regulate these three gunas, the Vedas give direction. Traigunya Vishaya Veda. This is the subject matter of the Vedas, how to regulate the three modes of material nature. So, Brahmana means as devotees, because Prabhupada said that as missionaries, we are supposed to have that kind of a Brahmanical attitude. Brahmanical attitude means willing to sacrifice. One way of willingness to sacrifice is comforts, right? Yes, we are not having the comforts of a material life and all of that. That is one level. But another level is A deeper level is not actually seeking any kind of honor, recognition, all of these kind of things. That is the deeper anartha. Actually, there is one verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, a very nice verse. I'll read that. This verse is about Gauranga and Nityananda. How Gauranga and Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami uses this example many times. Gauranga and Nityananda are like the sun and the moon. And then he says, many times this example is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but there are two wonderful things about this sun and the moon, Chaitanya and Nityananda. Eka adbhuta samakale donhara prakasha. Not very often we see sun and the moon together in the sky. Happens, but rare. So that is one adbhuta. Eka adbhuta samakale donhara prakasha. There is a second wonderful thing about Gauranga and Nityananda appearing. What is that? Ara adbhuta chitta guhara tamaha kare nasha. Ara adbhuta chitta guhara tamaha kare nasha. Chitta guhara tama. Chitta is our heart. Chitta guhara means at the core of our heart. At the depth of our heart. Chitta guhara tamaha. The darkness that is present in the depths of our heart. Kare nasha. They destroy or they illuminate the core of our heart, which has some darknesses hidden there. So, while commenting on this verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, there are actually 5 kinds of ignorance the conditioned soul has. See how wonderful Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is saying that in the depth of the heart there is some darkness, and Chaitanya and Nityananda's mercy destroys that. And then Srila Prabhupada is writing the commentary, and then he is quoting a verse from the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, there is a description of 5 kinds of ignorance of the living entity. What are these 5 kinds of ignorance? 1, accepting the body to be the self. This is the first ignorance of the self. This is widely prevalent, and we also are a victim of that one. Even as spiritualists, very often we come under that, and we are constantly struggling to understand that we are not the body. We are driven by the body. We respond to the urges of the body as if it is in my best self-interest. So, accepting the body to be the self. The second one, making sense gratification one's standard of enjoyment. This is the second ignorance of the living entity. Sense gratification provides one kind of an enjoyment, let us say. But as human beings, as pure living entities, we should not be running after that standard of enjoyment. We are actually entitled for a much higher standard of enjoyment. Just like Indra becoming a hog. That's a very wonderful example. The more you reflect on it, you will see the power of that example. Actually, as spiritual beings, we are entitled for pleasure, for happiness of associating with Krishna. Instead, we have given that up and we have accepted the standard of sense gratification, which is actually even available for animals. So, making sense gratification one's standard of enjoyment is another ignorance. Third, being anxious due to material identification. Material identification creates anxiety. And it creates varieties of anxiety. One anxiety is that you identify yourself with the body and you want to give comforts to the body and you work very hard, and that hard work gives you anxiety, right? We see that in the material world, in this very competitive world. I don't know if I have shared this example. Some years back, there was a report in the newspaper. The report was about one of the IT companies in our country. I think it was TCS or something, or maybe Wipro or Infosys. And there was a report that last quarter they had made 230 crores profit. Then I was reading that, I was thinking, in 3 months you make 230 crore profit. It's a great thing. Then I was reading the article further, the report, newspaper report, and then it says, but the senior management of this company are having sleepless nights because their other competitors have shown about 400 crores, 500 crores profit in the previous quarter. Just see, after making some 250 crore profit in 3 months, they're having sleepless night. So this is one kind of an anxiety for lording over material nature. Another kind of an anxiety, Srila Prabhupada points out in the Bhagavad Gita purport, 13th chapter, Adhambitva amanitva, amanitva. Amanitva means humility. And Prabhupada defines what is humility. Humility means not to be anxious, to be respected and honored by others. And then Prabhupada writes, material honor and respect is a deception in this world. It's actually a deception. It's actually a cheating. In this material world, there are so many social conventions and all of those kind of things that put somebody in a pedestal and he is honored, he's respected, he's given some awards and all of those kind of things, and people are actually mad after that. There are examples. Sometimes there was one man in our country, the government announced and he was given Padma Shri award. He rejected it because he thought Padma Shri is too less for him. Next year, the government was sorry about it. Next year, they gave him I think Padma Bhushan or Padma Vibhushan. That he went and accepted. And that was by somebody. Anyway, we should talk about it. So, just see how this is another bigger illusion. To run after honor, respect. And this is another bigger illusion. That's why Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Puja Pratishta Labha. Puja means this adoration. Pratishta means I am situated in big position. These are all the weeds, upashakhas. One has to pull out. So to become anxious about it is a big anartha. And willingness to give up that is another sacrifice a Brahmana has to make. And we as missionaries, we should remember these principles. We are not here for honor. We should not be after those things. And as an institution, senior devotee, those things are there. That what is ordained by the institution, we may accept as a requirement, as it is a service institutional requirement. But we should not be individually seeking it. And even though we are in an institution, for some reason something is deprived, we should not be affected by that. That is the test of spiritual progress. We should not be anxious. That's the meaning of being anxious due to material identification. That anxiety comes because of identification with matter. this body and the body identifying with a material situation. We have nothing to do with this. It's like a dream. Just like in a dream, sometimes we dream, I have become a king and I have become something very big man. And then the alarm goes off and then, oh, I'm not a king. I'm just this man. You see, it's like that. So in the same way, this world of honor and dishonor is a deception. We should not be after that. That deep realization, every missionary, every devotee for that matter, everyone should have, because deception, Prabhupada has used the word deception means cheating. We are getting cheated by the material world, by material energy. We are thinking that I'm having this big honorable position, that's so nice, and I'm working, and if that is slightly reduced, I get disturbed about it. I want to somehow push it back to the same level of honor that I have, and I'm anxious about it. We are getting cheated. Yes, someone who has got intense spiritual appetite does not care for all that. I want to know the absolute. There's one very nice verse in the Mahabharata I came across. It says, an expert grammarian is one, this is referring to Sanskrit obviously in that context. An expert grammarian will take a word, search its dhatu and explain it. Dhatu in Sanskrit means root. Prabhupada often gives that example. The word yoga comes from the word yuj, which means to link. The word bhajana comes from the dhatu bhaj, which means service. Prabhupada many times explains it. That's the dhatu, going into the root. A grammarian in Sanskrit is supposed to look at a word, look at its dhatu, look at the root and explain it. In the same way, an expert spiritualist looks for the dhatu of everything in this material world, which is Parabrahma. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattha sarvam pravartate. One who is constantly looking for Krishna in this world. That's why Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Sthavara jangama dekhe, na dekhe tharamurti. How does a pure devotee perceive this world? He sees the movable and the immovable, but he doesn't see their form. Sarvatra dekhe ishta deva spurti. Everywhere he sees, it is a spurti. Spurti here means a manifestation. He sees everything is a manifestation of his beloved Lord. He sees my Lord's manifestation here. And Prabhupada gives the example, just like a mother who is so affectionate to her child. When the child has gone away to the school or something, the mother sees some things, artifacts connected to the child. When she sees that toy or something, she doesn't see the toy. She sees her child there. That's because of the intense affection for the child. In the same way, a spiritualist is one. This is what a spiritualist should be cultivating. So, being anxious due to material identification. Fourth one, lamentation. A spiritualist should be free from lamentation. It's an ignorant soul who is going through lamentation. If we are going through lamentation, we should know we are on the material platform. Because Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, and Brahma Bhuta is a beginning of bhakti. Bhakti doesn't begin unless we come to Brahma Bhuta. What are we claiming to be bhaktas? If we are not come to Brahma Bhuta, if we have not come to the spiritual platform, and an indication of spiritual platform is lamentation, ignorance. So the fourth one is lamentation. And the fifth one, these are the five: ignorance of the living entity. With this we will close. The fifth one is thinking that there is anything beyond the absolute truth. There is nothing beyond the absolute truth. Thinking that there is something beyond the absolute truth that I should look upon, I should search for, I should possess. This is an illusion, an ignorance of the living entity. These are the chitta guhara tamaha. In the depths of the heart, these kinds of ignorance, tama means ignorance, it means illusion, it means darkness exists. And the mercy of Gauranga and Nityananda is to destroy that. That's why the spiritual process of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very potent. And Srila Prabhupada's creating an institutional form of that mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. In this mission, we get exposed. Our impurities, anarthas, every time gets exposed. And at that time, devotee must quickly work on it. That no, I want to be a spiritualist. I am not interested in this material enjoyment of different kinds. So this kind of a intense spiritual quest, intense spiritual appetite. Actually, that intense spiritual appetite is called Brahma Jignasa. Because we can become otherwise absorbed in Jignasa of this material world. So, Brahma Jignasa is the making of a spiritualist. And that is at an intense level practiced in the missionary's life. And it's a great privilege to be able to practice the life as a missionary. Going into the depths of our heart, illuminating it, freeing ourselves from that ignorance. That is the mercy of Chaitanya and Nityananda, and that is the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.